tonight. Fifth phase. Modi prepares for re-election as millions continue to head to the polls, braving the heat, storms and violence across multiple states. Surprise visit. Top diplomat Antony Blinken arrives in Kyiv with good news for the country's forces, bringing the promise of supplies to repel Russia. In memoriam, Israel embarks on a somber memorial day to recognize the terrors of the October 7th Hamas attacks. Thousands reel from the loss of loved ones. And never say never. No matter what hand you're dealt with in life, the only way out is pushing through. All that and more as World News Tonight starts right now.
This is Derana World News Tonight. Reporting from Colombo, here's Anuradhi Vikramasinghe.
A very good evening. You're joining us on World News. It's lovely to have you tune in tonight, where we have lots more updates to bring to you from all corners of the world, from international diplomacy to natural disasters. But before any of that, we start in our neighbouring India with updates on its elections. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi filed his nomination for re-election from the northern Uttar Pradesh's Varanasi constituency ahead of the fifth phase of the country's ongoing general election.
He was accompanied by the state's Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and an astrologer who proposed an auspicious time, according to the Hindu rituals, for Modi to file his nomination. Earlier in the day, Modi had performed rituals and prayers at the banks of the Ganges River and the Hindu temple. Varanasi, one of the two seats that Modi fought and won in the last elections in 2014 and 2019, will hold the election on the 1st of June as a part of the final phase of the Lok Sabha election. Voting on Monday for 96 parliament seats largely covered the southern and eastern parts of Telangana, Andhra Pradesh and Odisha, where the BJP is not as strong as in the country's north and the west.
But still in India, as the weather caused some catastrophes last night, at least 14 people died and over 70 others were injured after a billboard bigger than an Olympic swimming pool fell on them during a thunderstorm in India's financial capital, Mumbai.
Dozens are still fear-trapped. Rescuers could be seen working to clear debris from the site. The billboard fell on some houses and fuel stations next to a busy road following heavy rain and strong winds. Officials from the fire services, police and disaster response and other authorities continued rescue operations that were taking longer because gas cutters could not be used at the site due to the presence of fuel pumps. The agency owning the billboard did not have a permit from Mumbai's municipal corporation to put up the hoarding. The hoarding measured about 1,338 square meters, bigger than the Olympic pool and 9 times more than the maximum permitted size for a hoarding.
Diplomatic tensions are also high in the region as the US has warned of potential sanctions for any country considering business deals with Iran, hours after India signed a 10-year contract to operate a port with Tehran. India had entered an agreement to develop the strategically important Chabahar port close to Iran's border with Pakistan in 2016. And on Monday, it signed a long-term deal with Iran to develop it further. India's shipping minister called it a historic moment in India-Iran ties.
The move may not go down well with the US, which has imposed more than 600 sanctions on Iranian-related entities over the past 3 years. In a press briefing, the country's State Department deputy spokesperson Vedant Patel said that when he asked about the deal, that the US sanctions on Iran are still in place and that Washington would continue to enforce them. He said anyone considering business deals with Iran need to be aware of the potential risk of sanctions. India has not responded to the statement yet. India took over operations of the port at the end of 2018. The port opened a transit route for Indian goods and products to Afghanistan and Central Asia, avoiding the land route through Pakistan. So far, 2.5 metric tons of wheat and 2,000 tons of pulses have been shipped from India to Afghanistan through the Chabahar port.
On the Ukraine-Russia conflict now, some last-minute diplomacy is at play. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken tells President Volodymyr Zelensky that military aid is now on its way during a surprise visit to Kyiv. The top U.S. diplomat tells the Ukrainian president the weapons will make a real difference against the ongoing Russian aggression on the battlefield.
Antony Blinken arrived in Kyiv on Tuesday to bring reassurance to the Ukrainians in the form of U.S. support. The Secretary of State's visit to Ukraine was unannounced and entered the country via Poland. This is the first visit by a senior U.S. official since Congress passed a $95 billion foreign aid package that includes nearly $61 billion for Ukraine. Washington has stated that it is trying to accelerate its delivery of aid to the country.
On Friday, he signed out another package. Some of that equipment will get onto the battlefield this week.
This marks Blinken's fourth visit to Kiev since Russia launched its attack in February 2022. His visit comes amid Ukrainian setbacks on the battlefield as Russia continues to push into northeastern Ukraine after making several major advances over the past week, including a new offensive in the Kharkiv region on Friday. This forced thousands of residents to evacuate. A senior Ukrainian official says that the Russian defense minister being replaced signifies a major shakeup to the country's dynamics. Russian forces are continuing their advance on Ukraine as they took over more than 10 villages alongside the border of Kharkiv. An official from Ukraine's general staff admitted that the enemy had tactical success in the fight for Vovchansk on Monday, where some of the fiercest fighting is being conducted. Russian forces continued their advance on Ukraine's northern Kharkiv region on Monday, while the Ukrainian military says it has been pushing the enemy back as well, by appointing a new general to take command of the front lines. Fears remain that Moscow may soon push further into the country.
Meanwhile, achieving tactical success is the phrase used by Ukraine to admit that Russia is advancing around Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region, days after launching a surprise ground offensive over the border that has forced thousands to evacuate. But Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is saying that Kyiv has sent in reinforcements and that a counterattack is already ongoing.
As Russian forces approached, Ukrainian police worked to evacuate civilians from the small border village. Russia says it captured at least 9 villages over the weekend, and local authorities say thousands of people have fled. Ukraine's military chased Russian troops out of most of the Kharkiv region nearly 2 years ago. But with Russia's launch of a new armored ground attack, the front in northeastern Ukraine has reopened.
Russians are conducting so-called meat assaults. They're sending people to their deaths. They die, and their places are instantly taken by others and others and others.
The new offensive means Russia could move its artillery within range of Kharkiv and renew the shelling of Ukraine's second largest city. Russia may also be able to create a buffer zone to stop the frequent Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian targets. In addition, the offensive will force Ukrainian forces to shift limited manpower away from the front in Donbass, where Moscow's troops are gaining ground.
The attacks in the Kharkiv region are intended to stretch our forces and undermine the morale and motivation for Ukrainians to defend themselves.
Another reason for Russia's new assault is to exploit Ukrainian ammo shortages. Although the United States recently announced new aid packages and weapons shipments, some of it may take days or weeks to arrive.
And now we move to Beijing, where South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul is holding talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. Cho says momentum for cooperation should continue, to which Wang responded that the two should work together without interference. The conversation comes at a critical time, seeking new momentum in Korea-China relations.
South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul on Monday met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Beijing. In his opening remarks, Wang Yi said the two countries established each other as strategic partners as early as 2008, giving each other more important diplomatic positions. But he pointed out that difficulties and challenges have increased since then, which is not in line with the common interests of either country. Wang proposed the two countries adhere to the basic tenets of the diplomatic ties and work together without interference. Earlier in the day, before leaving for Beijing, South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul expressed his hopes in meeting with Wang.
This is an important first step in creating new momentum in South Korea-China relations. It's an important opportunity to revitalize strategic communication between the two countries amid a tough geopolitical environment. I hope to discuss ways to promote bilateral relations and issues on the Korean Peninsula and other regional and global matters.
When asked if he would raise the issue of China's forced repatriation of North Korean defectors, Minister Cho responded as follows.
The issue is an important concern of our government, so of course I will raise it and listen to what China has to say.
Other key issues were also related to North Korea.
North Korea's nuclear issue is our biggest security concern. It is also an issue that China has to play an important role in, so it will definitely be discussed as one of the key issues.
It's likely the two also discussed a possible trilateral summit between Seoul, Beijing, and Tokyo later this month. This is the first time in 6.5 years for a South Korean foreign minister to visit Beijing.
We're taking a short commercial break now. More world news on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Hong Kong leader John Lee called for full information from British authorities on the arrests of 3 men, including a manager at a Hong Kong government office in the UK, who were charged with assisting Hong Kong's Foreign Intelligence Service.
Speaking a day after the men appeared in a British court, Lee said any attempt to make an unwarranted allegation against the Hong Kong SAR government was unacceptable. The 3 men are accused of assisting a foreign intelligence service between December and May by agreeing to undertake information gathering, surveillance and acts of deception in Britain, according to charges brought in court. They were charged with offences under Britain's National Security Act. The 3 men include the office manager of the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in London. During the news conference in Hong Kong, Lee confirmed that Yuan was a university classmate who was photographed with Lee in a group graduation photograph from 2002.
Now, Britain's King Charles handed over a senior military role to his son Prince William at a ceremony marking a rare joint appearance for the pair as the King steps up his return to public duties after his cancer diagnosis. And for updates, we have other Derana World News special correspondent Aruni Adhikari from Nottingham in the UK. Aruni?
Yes, Anuradhi. Charles presented William with the title of Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps, a position the 75-year-old monarch held for 32 years in front of an Apache helicopter and watched by service personnel at the Army Flying Museum in southern England. The visit was Charles' latest engagement since he returned to work at the end of April, almost 3 months after Buckingham Palace announced he was being treated for an unspecified type of cancer. William had also taken a break from official duties for several weeks in March and April this year, choosing to spend time and care for his wife after she revealed she was undergoing preventative chemotherapy for cancer. At the handover ceremony, Charles said he was saying goodbye with sadness, but the Army Air Corps would go from strength to strength under his son. The title transfer was announced last August after Charles' accession to the throne. Back to you, Anuradhi.
All right, thank you very much. That was other Derana World News special correspondent Aruni Adhikari from Nottingham in the UK. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet ministers were heckled at ceremonies to mark Memorial Day, when Israel commemorates fallen soldiers and Israeli civilian victims of the Hamas attacks.
At 11 o'clock on Monday, sirens rang out across Israel to mark Memorial Day, and the Prime Minister laid a wreath in Jerusalem in honor of the country's fallen soldiers and victims of terrorist acts.
We are determined to win in this struggle. We have and we will continue to extract a high price from the enemy for their atrocities. We will achieve the goals of victory, and at the centre of them is the return of our hostages home, a victory that with God's help will guarantee our existence and our future.
But after Hamas killed 1,200 Israelis on the 7th of October, after what is widely considered a colossal national security failure, and hundreds more soldiers died in the ensuing war that has failed to bring home the remaining 132 hostages, government representatives have been met with anger at ceremonies across the country. At Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, families walked out of the military ceremony en masse during the Prime Minister's speech, while members of the public clashed with security forces during hard-line headliner Itamar Ben-Gvir's speech in Ashdod, some shouting insults and leaving the ceremony. And protesters blocked the road and held up banners in Tel Aviv on Memorial Day Eve, calling on the government to strike a truce deal to free the hostages. Traditionally, Memorial Day gives way to Independence Day on the 14th of May. Usually a festive occasion for Israelis, this year's official ceremony has been pared down, with no Air Force flyby or live audience.
And we are back on Trump's legal troubles now. Donald Trump's ex-fixer, Michael Cohen, told jurors that his former boss personally signed off on a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels to bury her story about an alleged sexual encounter before it could derail his 2016 campaign.
Cohen, who worked as an executive and lawyer for Trump's company for nearly a decade, testified that Trump told him the situation would be a, quote, disaster for the campaign. Trump's defense has suggested the payment to Daniels was meant to protect his family from embarrassment. But Cohen testified that Trump wasn't thinking about his wife Melania at the time, and instead it was, quote, all about the campaign. At the defense table, Trump shook his head. At the center of the case is Cohen's $130,000 payment to Daniels ahead of the 2016 election. Prosecutors have said Trump paid Cohen back after the election and hid the reimbursement by recording it falsely as a legal retainer fee. Trump is being charged with falsifying business records tied to the transaction. He has pleaded not guilty and denies ever having sex with Daniels.
This trial is rigged. It's dishonest. It's a disgrace to New York. It's a disgrace to the country. I should be out campaigning now instead of sitting in a very cold courthouse.
The 2024 Republican candidate, who is running against Democratic President Joe Biden in November, says the trial is a politically motivated attempt to interfere with his campaign. The Manhattan trial is widely seen as less consequential than 3 other criminal prosecutions Trump faces. Prosecutors have said they could rest their case this week.
And on the road to the White House tonight, despite the legal troubles that Trump faces, Joe Biden's hopes of defeating Donald Trump in the 2024 U.S. election suffered a massive blow after a new round of polling showed the president trailing his Republican rival in most of the crucial swing state races.
According to a New York Times Siena survey, Trump leads Biden among probable voters in every swing state except for Michigan and is ahead of the US president among registered voters in all swing states except Wisconsin. The grim data for Biden is likely to increase the concern among Democrats about the president's re-election prospects with less than 6 months to go before the election day. The latest poll comes a day after a survey that showed US voters were growing more troubled by the inflation again and still rate Trump higher than Biden on the economy. The poll showed Biden losing by significant margins to Trump in the western and southern swing states including Nevada, Arizona and Georgia that he won in 2020. In Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin, the industrial states that he must win to remain in the White House, the contest is closer but still on the knife edge.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news right after this. Welcome back. Before we leave you tonight, we have a story of motivation to inspire you. There are those of us that were not dealt a good hand in life. It could be economic situations or sometimes even physical disability. Well, regardless of what you believe that your setbacks are, it's always admirable to pick up and not back down from the world. And this 22-year-old did just that.
Emily Rowley. The big day has come for Emily Rowley. Graduation at last. The 22-year-old from Florida earned a degree in psychology from Southern New Hampshire University, and she did it all online.
I was born with bilateral phocomelia, which means absence of both arms, as well as microgastria, which is smaller stomachs.
The talk to text feature helped tremendously with her homework.
When doing papers or any assignments, even the discussion posts, I was able to just kind of think right off the top of my head, speak to it, and then from there I use my feet, to do the minor adjustments that the computer might not picked up on to correct it and have it ready to go for submission.
When Emily was born, she says doctors didn't think she'd live long.
And here I am today, proving a lot of doctors wrong. that thought, I wouldn't be doing the things I am today, whether it's driving or going to school and just doing everyday things.
Over the past few years, Emily started sharing what her day-to-day was like on TikTok, whether it was making tea, listening to music, or petting her cat. She uses her feet to help a lot.
And I saw how many questions people had, and I was like, this is a big platform to share, and bring awareness. So I used that and was like, if people have questions, I'm gonna answer those questions so people can know about people with disabilities.
She's proud to share her story and hopes it inspires others.
Being myself is the best thing that I could be. I wouldn't want to change who I am because I've had opportunities and different things that I've experienced due to my disability, and raising awareness and talking about making the world more open and accepting of those with disabilities.
I hope her story inspires you to think twice before you throw in the towel on any accounts. But that's all the stories we have to report to you tonight on World News. Tune in again tomorrow for more key updates from across the globe. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.